Hello and welcome to another episode of Cafe DC. Today we have with us Under Secretary for State, Tara Sonnenschein. Madam Secretary, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you have been a very accomplished broadcaster yourself. Now that you're, so to speak, in the other chair, do you still have some nostalgia? Do you miss your role as a broadcaster?
Well, as you know, once a journalist, always a journalist. You always have the adrenaline rush of a story, and your mind is always trained to listen very closely, as journalists do, and to think very carefully about your sources and your story. So I think the profession never leaves one, even if one leaves the profession.
So while we are at it, one of your stated goals, I heard one of your policy speeches, and in there you basically said that one of the goals is to improve international broadcasting from the US. Now that every other country, especially China and Russia, they're increasing their budgets in international broadcasting and public diplomacy, our budget, especially at BBD, is kind of going down. Your thoughts, anything being done on that level? Or?
Well, one of the first visits or interviews I gave, as you know, was to Voice of America when I arrived. And it was to signal that I do care very much about international broadcasting. And it's a proliferating sector. There are so many television outlets, and I think we have to really think strategically about local news around the world, about regional news, national news, global news. And it's all changing very rapidly with social media and the potential to really drive news from your computer. But we have to think also about what the capacities are in different countries. Some countries have wideband internet usage, and others are not quite wired. So I want to take a holistic look at our international broadcasting strategies and what makes sense region to region.
International broadcasting can't be just government. I mean, not just public. Maybe some private sectors can also help. Is there any effort in your department to reach out to private sector in this country to see if they can help you in building a better strategy in the especially the target audiences, Pakistan for that matter?
Well, as you know, the public-private partnerships are a new form of working collaboratively between government and private sector. So in every aspect of public diplomacy, one can look at the potential to partner with foundations, with commercial news outlets, and to really look at the potential of our convening power in the U.S. government. At the State Department, we have an ability to convene stakeholders from across multiple sectors. And I think international broadcasting is yet another dimension of where these public-private partnerships can have some leverage.
Madam Secretary, there's like a little conflict between what we are and what we do. One of very oft-quoted phrases from your speeches is, information is oxygen. And by nature, since our international broadcasting is Congress funded, so we can't really do so much that the other private sector is doing in disseminating information about this country as well, as around the world. So, do you see this dichotomy of the objectives and aims there?
I see it more as an opportunity than a conundrum or a challenge. There are so many tools in the toolbox. International government broadcasting is one of many ways you reach people. And so I think if we see this as a multi-tiered, multi-platform approach in which everything can be utilized differently and not necessarily at the same time. So I think we really have to not use a one-size-fits-all approach, particularly because our audiences are so different. And we, as America, we're made up of so many different constituencies and different individuals. So this old kind of let's use one pattern, I think is challenged now by the multiplicity and the proliferation of different outlets and tools.
Before we get to the strategy of how to basically do the public diplomacy, do you have an exact image of the United States that you really want to project?
You know, it's interesting. I am very committed to a show and tell approach. We tell who we are and what we stand for in our principles, our openness, our tolerance, our pluralism, our democratic values. We also show who and what we are by the work we do, the assistance we provide, the projects we fund, the exchanges we do. So taking that show and tell attitude, but also not preaching and teaching so much as listening, being open, climbing into somebody else's movie, if you will, understanding that it's not even two-way, it's multi-directional in terms of the conversation and the narrative. So I think this old winning hearts and minds, I don't think this is about winning so much as it is about collaboration, cooperation, dialogue, discussion, and the show and tell approach to who we are. We have our core principles and our core values, and we uphold them, and we demonstrate them, and we talk about them.
One of the first countries you visited after taking over as the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy was Pakistan. And show and tell, I'm sure you had a lot to show to the Pakistanis that what the US has been doing since the birth of that country. But there are also some very, very difficult moments in the relationship. And I'm sure your counterparts have also some show and tell. Any difficult moments that you faced there, and how did you handle those moments?
I would say one of the, not so much difficult, but interesting at least, and perhaps a bit challenging, was going to Kinnaird College in Lahore and meeting with young people and giving a speech, and then taking questions and answers, taking questions and providing answers. And young people are always quizzitive and inquisitive, and there were some difficult questions about our relationship. And I needed to explain to these young people that there will be ups and downs. Relationships get tense, but that we're in it with Pakistan for the long haul. We have to be in this for not just short-term and mid-term, but long-term education and economic building. And so there was some back and forth, and at the end they came up and they wanted to know about our exchange programs and how to come to the United States. And so you could feel the tension melt away as we began to engage. And that, of course, is what public diplomacy is about. Exposure, engagement, conversation, leading to somebody tilting their head a different way and saying, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Very good. Now we have to take a short break. After the break, actually, we're going to ask her one question about the supposed mistreatment of some foreigners here in this country, also which affects the public diplomacy around the world. So we'll be right back. We are back. Thank you, Madam Secretary, once more. I just want to go back to what we were discussing about the public diplomacies in Pakistan. And one question which arises from your answer that, the internal policy and external policy on public diplomacy, they're intertwined. A lot of people, America is a major, major tourist attraction in the world. People from all around the world, every nook and corner, they come here. And sometimes, actually a lot of times, they feel that they haven't been treated well. They go back and then they start a word of mouth. So is it something in your domain that you can also address those domestic policies?
Well, let me address first the part of your question about this interconnectedness. The whole world is interconnected, as we know. What happens in the United States affects countries overseas. What happens overseas affects our country. So we really are living in this global community where there are just many intertwined relationships. Anytime a foreign student or visitor or tourist comes to the United States, we want that person to have a positive experience, especially the students who come. We want them to have a positive social exposure, cultural understanding, and a good educational experience. So we try to be a beckoning, welcoming nation. And particularly now when we're trying to attract more tourists, which we are, to the United States, we also want to make the visa restrictions less so that people don't feel hamstrung before they even get here. So in examples like China and Brazil, we've reduced the wait time quite dramatically so that people can get processed quicker. Once they get here, whether you're a student from Pakistan or any place else, it should be something you go home and feel good about. When I was in Islamabad and Lahore, I met many young people. Some were in our Access program where the State Department funds young Pakistanis to learn English. They haven't yet gone overseas, but they're learning about English language and culture. And they were so excited at the experience and the exposure just to the language, and the confidence it built in them was awe-inspiring. Then I met with some Pakistani students who had just returned from a year in the United States. They'd been in upstate New York and out west. And what amazed me was not only how upbeat they were about the United States, how upbeat and positive they were about taking what they had learned back to Pakistan and getting involved in development organizations, in global work. They understood the connectivity between the United States and Pakistan. They were the best ambassadors we could have on either side. And they really knew that this was the beginning of a road that would be a long-traveled journey. That's what you're seeking out of public diplomacy.
I suppose diaspora here is also a very important component of your policy, public diplomacy. Anything on that front being done?
Yes, I just participated in the second or third Global Diaspora Conference here. It was packed. There were people from across every heritage and ethnic group. And these are people who've made their life and living in the United States but feel deeply connected, first generation, second generation, to their countries of origin. And they are inspiring. They want to be involved in building the narrative for both countries. And so I am acutely aware of the robust, vibrant nature of the diaspora community. Before traveling to Pakistan, I met with many Americans, Pakistani Americans, who were able to describe their country of birth in ways that no American scholar could describe.
Very good. I know nobody has control over these incidents. Something very unfortunate happened over the weekend, and it did have some of the direct contacts with that land, South Asia. I'm talking about India and Pakistan as well. Pakistan, you probably know, has over 160 Sikh temples, and there's quite a sizable population there. So there are some concerns, but does that make these kinds of incidents make your job and of course efforts a little difficult? Any thoughts on on these incidents? Everybody has condemned from all the way from the president to everybody in that county, but I would just want you to reflect on that incident, please.
What happened in Wisconsin was a terrible tragedy, and my heart does go out to all the victims and their families. I know that our Undersecretary, Wendy Sherman, has been in touch with Ambassador Rao, and our ambassador in India, Nancy Powell, has been in touch with her counterparts. And so we are doing what we can to express our feelings at this difficult moment, particularly because this was a house of worship. And we in the United States value and take pride in the openness we have to multiple faiths and to believing that any house of worship is a sacred space and an important place. And so, of course, these incidents always make people very upset, and we just can reaffirm and recommit ourselves to having a peaceful, prosperous nation that is opening and welcoming, and to hope that these incidents don't happen.
We've been promoting your interview on the Facebook, and we do have a question, a related question from somebody, Sarup Charan. Seems somebody, from India, but they didn't mention their origin. He asked this question: what was the U.S. doing to ensure the safety and security of the religious minorities here?
We, of course, as a nation, are most dedicated and working always on the security of our country and of the people who visit here. So it's not so much what we're doing for just a house of worship, but we want to balance always the freedom of individuals to come and go and be able to enjoy their time and the need for security. And those two can sometimes be in conflict, and sometimes it's a long process at an airline counter or a line for security, and you're always balancing an individual's right to privacy and the freedom to be able to travel and enjoy places, but also to secure and keep safe anyone coming and going from the United States.
Thank you very much, but we have to take one more short break.
All right.
And after we come back, we're going to ask her about the deadlines, the concept of deadlines, and asking to do more from each other in terms of public diplomacy and foreign policy. So do stay with us, please. Welcome back, and our last question of the interview. Madam Secretary, I was just reading one of your blogs from last year on Huffington Post, actually, and you very rightly outlined the concept and sometimes the urge to have deadlines here in this country. It seems as if, and quote unquote, we operate on deadlines. And a lot of people outside this country, especially in Pakistan, they also feel that Americans give them too many deadlines and ask them to do more all the time. It may be just a foreign policy issue, but it also has to do a lot with public diplomacy because, it raises questions and sometimes resentment. How do you deal with that?
This area of deadlines fascinates me, and it is an area where I would use your word from the first segment, conundrum. In an internet age, having been trained as a journalist to come full circle back, we always had a deadline. We had to be on the air for Nightline at 11:30. No excuses. You could not go on and say, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared for the show tonight. It was live and it was going to air at a certain time. Over time in the media space, I noticed how that concept of deadlines began to fade. You could post at any hour. You could repost. You could tweet. You could change your blog posting. I began to notice that my children didn't go to the library where you have to return a book at a certain day. So I was really philosophizing about this kind of end of deadlines in certain sectors. The irony or the conundrum is that with public diplomacy, we don't necessarily want a deadline. Because as I said at the beginning, we're in something for the long haul. We want relationships to evolve and transpire. So I'm now rethinking, actually, the conundrum that in public diplomacy, you want alumni of programs to come back. You want to keep adding to the relationship. So this whole concept of a deadline is yet to be figured out in my mind, but I know you have a deadline on this program.
Absolutely. Can I ask the status of your 13-year-old?
Yes, my 13-year-old is now 15, and my older one is preparing to go off to college. Mm-hmm. The applications had deadlines to go to college, and the younger one is enjoying the summer, which also has a deadline.
Do you have 2 children?
2 boys.
And where are you from in these states?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and went to Tufts University and did a stint overseas at the London School of Economics, and now here hope to see the entire world.
Very accomplished indeed. Madam Secretary, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.